a Playlist original.
Hey everyone, Jeff here from Films at Home. Thanks for coming back to the Films at Home podcast. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite audio platform, I do appreciate the support. Today's episode, we're going to be talking to Brad Henderson and Ryan from Terror Vision. Now, Terror Vision is a new label, Blu-ray label. They also do cassette tapes. They've been around for a little bit, vinyl records, things like that, but they're getting more into Blu-ray since Brad joined the team. And they're releasing some incredible stuff. I mean, they have hundreds of movies that they have the rights to, lots of stuff that was like shot on video, thought to be lost. They're finding new negatives. They are literally like re-energizing movies that have been gone forever, have not had releases since the days of VHS, and they're bringing them to Blu-ray and eventually UHD. Like, they're doing a really, really cool thing with their label. And we'll talk about this in the episode, but like, even though it's Terror Vision, definitely like obviously has a bit of a horror sort of theme to it. They're doing tons of stuff. They're going to do comedies. They're going to do dramas. They're going to really, open it up and sort of, their goal and their vision, as they'll tell you in the video, in the interview, is they want to sort of create that video store feeling for the 2023 consumer. And I think it's really exciting. So this episode, we get into a lot of stuff. We talk about like how they get the rights to movies, how those licensing deals work, the process of like getting a movie from, VHS or beta or a film negative or whatever you have over to Blu-ray and the costs associated with that. So if you were ever curious, like ever had questions about, man, how would you start a Blu-ray label? What are the costs with it? How would you license movies? Like, they're super, super transparent about all of the work they're doing, which is really, really cool. Like, not a lot of people are as transparent with the business side of things as they are. So if you're interested in that, you'll really like this. And there's a ton of talk here about lost movies and sort of lost media and what's happening, even in modern day with streaming and movies that just sort of disappear from film festivals or just get, lost even from the last 5 years. So very interesting conversation with these two guys. They know their stuff. Brad is clearly pushing really hard on the Blu-ray and movie side of things. And I think Terror Vision is definitely going to be a label to watch. So sit back, relax, enjoy the interview, and I'll talk to you guys at the end. All right, guys, I'm here with Brad and Ryan from Terror Vision. Hey, guys, thank you for joining today. This is super exciting. Happy to have you on, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
So if you could, you guys just want to give a quick little like introduction to each of your backgrounds, what you do, and then sort of talk Terror Vision and what Terror Vision's all about, just to give a little baseline for the audience. That'd be awesome, and then we can jump into it.
Mr. Greyface?
No, after you, dear.
So my background's a lot in home video. Starting from writing reviews for websites, for movies, for home video releases, way back when. I had a podcast, blah, blah, blah. And then I always wanted to start a home video company, but it's, as Ryan would probably tell you, or anybody, it's incredibly expensive to do that. So I got my foot into Wild Eye Releasing, which I did for a little while with Rob over there. And then simultaneously kind of getting in with Vinegar Syndrome, because I was a huge fan of what they were doing very, very early on to the Night Train to Terror days. And I was doing some kind of freelance work there. And eventually a project came up that was really tough, and I guess they couldn't figure out. And they asked me, and I said, yeah, I can do that. That's not a problem. And I was successful at it. And then I said, if you want me to ever, find material or find rights, I'm, good at that too. And so they just said, sure, whatever you can find, I guess just kind of not dismissing me, but, humoring me a little bit. And I had 5 movies like 2 days later.
Wow.
And then they took that seriously. And then I started doing some other work. And then, and then eventually I was hired after the Spookies thing. So I, had found the rights to Spookies. And, that's eventually when I think they took me very, very seriously and hired me on as acquisitions. And then during that time, just on vacation, I met Ryan at his store in Savannah, at his record store, and we kind of hit it off. And we both like super weird things. And then, talking about vinyl releases, that sort of thing, getting these soundtracks out. And then kind of the movie thing came up, licensing films, doing home video. Then we became, a partner label with OCN, aka Vinegar Syndrome. And we had 5-6 releases under there, and then we left OCN to do our own thing, and now we're here. And we have 4 titles since we left that partnership, and now we're just doing our own thing.
So Ryan, a little background on you, I guess. You talk about your store and how you got involved here and sort of your background.
Yeah, so I started Grayface 23 years ago. Jesus. Every year I do an interview and it gets longer and it makes me want to cry. So I started that 23 years ago, which was just a sort of indie rock recording label. But the film side, we released 3 features in the first, I think, 12 years of being a label, something like that. They're all terrible horror movies, but so bad that you won't be able to find them. But I just noticed that there was sort of a difference in the demographic that were even mildly interested in the film side versus the indie rock, shoegaze, psych stuff that we were releasing on vinyl. So that's basically when I hatched TerraVision, so that I could completely separate those two marketplaces instead of pissing off indie kids consistently with, blood and gore, more or less. So TerraVision started in late 2014 and was mostly just LPs and cassettes, and VHS. But then, I had always wanted to get into Blu-ray, and I just didn't know what the hell I was doing. So when Brad and I met, it was a perfect sort of thing because he was like, "I'm sure we can do this."
Yeah. Well, so you sort of had the brand, and you were just looking for the right guy to come in and just help, launch the movie side of it.
Yeah, I mean, just like, because I already had been dealing with a bunch of people about putting out their films for mostly VHS. I mean, I've got, the rights to, 40 movies for VHS release. So most of those I wanted to do on Blu-ray and VHS. And it just was like, I just didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So very amazing to happen upon Brad just browsing the TerraVision section at my Grayface record shop.
That's awesome. Really? So you guys you did not know each other at all before he just showed up and started browsing in the store?
No.
I didn't know. I didn't know Ryan, but I knew TerraVision, the record label. I didn't know because my wife and I took just a surprise trip towards the end of towards the end of October of 2020. So it's kind of weird because obviously people are slowly stepping back into public, and Savannah was a nice spot because it's so open. It's not like you're inside all the time, and they had Savannah has a pretty good policy with masks and stuff, so it felt like a safe place to go. And plus, we were holed up for fucking 6 months, so she just surprised me, and we went. I always like to go to local record stores. And she just surprised me, and I walked in and I saw TerraVision. I just thought it was a TerraVision section. I didn't know they were based in Savannah, and the owner was sitting next to me. But that's kind of how it happened, and we kept in touch, and and here we are. It's just a right place, right time scenario, just odd. But I mean, obviously it worked out. So that's
Well, I
cool.
think if I recall, you were holding the Spookies score that I released in 2015, and I said, "Why the fuck are you? Why are you buying that?" or something like that. And,
Yeah.
and your response was, "I'm the guy who found Spookies," or something. I was like, "What the
Yeah. Yeah.
fuck is?"
So,
It was so weird.
yeah.
Yeah. Just fate, huh? Fate aligns, but that's awesome. I mean, so I want to ask, like, you guys, you each mentioned going out and like acquiring rights to these movies. Like, how does that happen? How do you get into that? How do you have, happen to have 40 different, rights to releasing horror movies? How do you find a movie like Spookies? Like, for both you, like, how does that just happen through connections, or like, there's so many movies out there that are like borderline lost that people are still discovering. Like, how do you go about that whole process, finding things for the label?
Yeah, I mean, we get asked that a lot, and kind of the same answer always pops up, that it's a different story for every film. Some things are really easy, some things could take years.
Mm.
But it's a lot of research, it's just a lot of knowledge, what happened to these companies. So it's kind of like, your favorite musician, your favorite band, let's just say, um, there's a kind of a guitar for hire type guy. I'm drawing a blank on the dude that it was in like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Nine Inch Nails. But anyways, he's like in 20 different bands, but he has his huge fan base, and people are just drawn to him,
Hmm.
and they know every step that he has taken. Or any band, like you follow, you listen to what, so all the little side projects, everything that they do. If they have a hot sauce, if they have a clothing line, who they give their extra funds to for charities. um Super nerds like myself, I follow like Italian companies and producers and whatnot on everything. It was just something that I obsessed with. So you kind of just know sometimes, like, oh, that film ended up in this acquisition in 1980 something, and then it flipped over in the 90s when they got bought out by this one, and then the 2000, and it's just, honestly, it's just like tracing. And then a lot of that stuff is like online or just word of mouth when you talk to filmmakers. So
Hmm.
sometimes a director knows what happened to their film because they followed it, because some directors just leave a project because they were for
Yeah.
hire. And then sometimes a producer knows because they were hired for the company that made the film. They were a producer for hire, and so they kind of knew what happened to it. But again, sometimes it could be a year or two of tracking and tracing people down. Other times you just pick up the phone and it's like, hey, you own this? And they're like, yeah. You want a license? Sure. And then it's done, like within a day. Like
Hmm.
that happens sometimes too. So it's just a different, like I said, a different story for everything. But having nerd knowledge definitely helps quite a bit. The film aspect to it, of like just knowing the movies, that's just growing up and being a nut, a film nerd.
Right.
So everything that we're doing is by taste and what we like so far, and it will continue to be that way, because it's just a vast knowledge of just random shit. I got into watching movies when I was very, very young and consumed everything I could. And then when my videos, like 3 video stores, I just kind of rented everything. And that's everything from like horror to drama to comedy, everything. I mainly focused in horror, and then I branched out to like action, and then I branched out to drama, and then comedy, whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, then I started doing tape trading conventions when I was in my teens. Going to like, basically they're just bootlegs of conventions of, mostly foreign films. It's not like new stuff or stuff in the U.S. But it was like, hey, you get these like literally blank tape, no label, and it's like, hey, this is a German gore film, $5. Or it's like, hey, I have these, and you do a trade. I never traded anything. I just bought. So, when you did those type of things, you just got the weirdest titles, and some of them didn't have subtitles. It was just, it's kind of like a gamble on each one. And that's where in my kind of mid-teens, my mom was taking me to those places, and that's where kind of everything grew. I would go to flea markets, I would buy tapes. I was at the right age when DVD was coming out. All the video stores were like, well, this is a new thing, we need to make room, let's get rid of all the tapes. And now, like, you can go online and pay $10 for a Ghostbusters tape. Well, at one point when I was in my teens, those tapes were quarters. Like, no one charged a lot of money for tapes. That didn't happen until probably, I don't know, like 2010, probably earlier than that, probably like 2008. That's when price of tapes just started skyrocketing. And then you couldn't get those rarities because the rarities was what was, increasing. And I mean, even the standard tapes like Ghostbusters and Scream, people are like flocking over these things. Like, you have those at a booth at convention, they're gone within minutes. Because this whole resurgence came about. It's the same thing happened with records, records were super cheap and now they're expensive again. So it's just a matter of time. And now, if you notice, like, Blu-ray prices have went way down. Like you go on like Blu-ray.com or Best Buy, things are like $3.99. When Blu-ray came out, I was going to the store and they were $40. I mean, Blu-ray players were close to $1,000 when they hit. Now you can get them at Goodwill or somebody for $5. So it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, so it's really just like institutional knowledge then. I mean, that's sort of where it all stems from.
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but yeah, for me, that's what it does. Between going to school, for stuff and just kind of really focusing on film my entire life. Because even when I did this like research and stuff way before I even had a job in home video. But even when I started working at Wild Eye, it was different. It was like newer things. We were looking for, like C-grade indie films, that were kind of just abandoned because it's really hard to market those things.
I'm in the record store, so there's a customer that probably wants the new insert bland record here.
No worries.
I will say, when I started TerraVision, it was really easy to acquire things. Like, because I had already been a company, Grayface, for like, that would have been 14 years or something. Why does this phone never stop?
No voicemail.
It's probably full, honestly. That's my bad.
All good.
But yeah, so I just was accumulating all these contacts. So like the first 15 TerraVision releases on vinyl and cassette and VHS were like the simplest thing in the world. Those are people that I had been sort of vetting, so to speak, for years. And I already knew sort of the plan. It was just figuring out the financials, because the idea with the TerraVision record side of things, like when I put out Grayface records, the whole idea is like a sort of punk DIY vibe. So they're pretty cheap, like literally $15. And, I spend $8.50 making them, tiny bit of profit. But cheap, like in stores, cheap. TerraVision, I was like, I really want to go lavish and have things feel expensive. And it turns out, if they feel expensive, they are expensive. So, so it was just a completely different sort of concept. And, that was the only difficult part of the imprint. When I first started, it was coming up with the, $26,000 ish per project to just get out a fucking puppet show on record. These things that, like, I figured no one in their right mind would buy, but I wanted to do them. So now acquisitions have gotten harder on the on that side of things, because there's a lot of labels kind of doing a similar thing. Like it used to just be Mondo / Death Waltz, Waxwork, and TerraVision, which worked out really well because Waxwork puts out stuff I would never put out. Mondo Death Waltz is like pretty mainstream, so I was able to like fill this really nice small niche.
Yeah,
but there's been like a glom of labels. I can think of like 15 of them now, all kind of going after the same sort of titles, which is it fortunately hasn't proven to be an issue, because a lot of them don't have much of a budget, so it's fine. But yeah, there's been an interesting switch over the past 5 years, I guess is what I'm saying, to where everything is competitive instead of like it was very leisure.
Yeah. Well, that competition in the Blu-ray space, I imagine right now has to be pretty intense too, given the amount of these boutique labels that are out there, right? I mean, we talk about, you talk about Vinegar Syndrome and all their partners, but you've got, a Shout Factory, a Scream Factory, an Arrow Video, and yeah, they're a little more mainstream, but like, I guess what's your plan to sort of stand out in that space? Is it acquiring, these rare, obscure titles, or, is it part of your packaging, special features? How are you guys trying to build this label out so that you stand at least with those other guys that have been around for a while? I imagine it's difficult to come in 2022, 2023 and try to kick something like this off.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some competition here, and it's most of it's friendly competition, because we're in touch with labels. We talk to other labels. We have friends at other labels. I mean, I still have a good relationship at Vinegar Syndrome. I'm still doing some freelance stuff there and consulting. So it's it's not as like the bloodshed and the label wars as people say. But there obviously is a competition, but something that I think stands out with TerraVision and will stand out. I mean, obviously it's a little early, but this will show in, probably in the next 6 months, is that we're building a label based on kind of our specific taste and what we want to see out. Not so much quote unquote catering to an audience, because I feel that a lot of movies that are known and are released, like you said, mainstream, a lot of those companies are dealing with like Paramount, MGM, and Lionsgate, which is cool. I mean, those movies are great too, and we're in talks with those companies as well. But we're also after probably like the more C grade, C grade titles. But we do have some like A-list titles that are coming out. But it's also turning people on to things, because that's something that I enjoyed and have enjoyed for my time in home video since the beginning, was living vicariously through people experiencing things for the first time, whether they love it or they hate it. Because it is kind of gratifying when you turn someone on to a movie that no one like even knew existed, aside from maybe a few hundred people, sometimes a few thousand people, but that's such a minimal number, compared to the people that actually love and watch movies. So we have a lot of surprises. We're doing everything from kids movies to horror films to, comedies to, going back to, the early like 1900s we're talking about, to like even like brand new films that are just now coming out. We're doing everything, and it's based on what Ryan and I enjoy. And we talked in behind the scenes about how we're recreating a video store with the TerraVision brand. So there is no brand, the brand is our taste and what we want to see and what we love. But that doesn't limit us to anything, because already I get, messages, we get emails saying, I don't know. I mean, I think you and I even said, does it fit the brand? Well, yeah, it fits the brand because there is no brand, so
Yeah.
that's the cool thing. It's just stuff that, I mean, because there's so many, a lot of companies, they focus on like a film side, get the film elements, restore it, scan it, restore it, put it back out, which is 100% my jam. But not everything's shot on film, and not every film can be found. There's many films that are neglected because the filmmakers threw away the elements. And there's a lot of companies that will just be like, oh, well, that's done. Well, that's not preservation to me. That's neglecting titles. And that's something that, we discussed internally at TerraVision that we will do. Now, we will exhaust every avenue to find those film elements. But if we're left with a beta SP of a movie or a tape, and we know that it's not out there, then why not? If that could be the best present, because that is the best presentation. That's the only presentation you'll get. Because if it just stays on YouTube and $500 VHS tapes on eBay, that movie will fucking die.
Yeah.
It will be gone forever. So that's something that, we're doing at TerraVision, is we are solely focusing on widespread preservation, and we've already, come to some films where they were known for not having material, but we ended up finding something, and you can source from a print, you can source from an inner negative, inner positive, obviously a negative. You can do a color reversal. You can do, I mean, you can do so many things. There's so many different types of film elements that prints can be struck or something can be struck that can be, HD. But then also sometimes you can't. But we also have certain technology and things that we can take a beta SP master and we can turn that into something that looks really nice. I mean, you could take, now this is shot on video, of course, but you could take Copperhead, for example. Copperhead was borderline lost. I mean, you couldn't even find it bootlegged on like YouTube or anything. It's just not out there. And we had 3 different transfers of tape done for that movie, which is stupid, but we did. We did it. But we were able to find the best version of the film, and it looks pretty goddamn good. And we joke around and say it shouldn't, but it does.
Yeah.
It looks really, really great. So we can do that with various movies that are even, shot on 16, 8mm, 35, because we come in contact with these producers. And, if it's a small film, we're not talking big budget stuff that Paramount or MGM has. We're talking about individuals that own their own copyright and, they distributed the film themselves. When that typically happens, they have the negative probably in their possession, and they sent the inner negative overseas to be duplicated if it had worldwide distribution or another country. That shit's probably lost because those things are incredibly rare and hard to find. And like, where do you start? All those labs are now defunct, and more than 90% of the time they're thrown away. And then sometimes you just don't know what happened in the inner positive. But the producer says, oh yeah, I threw it out. It was in my garage. It took up space, because they're having these 4 or 5 canisters of film.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
It's pretty heavy. And, it's probably in an old Goldberg that is rusted, or film canisters that are shit. It probably smells because it's in the heat. And they're just like, why would you want that in your garage? It's staining your workbench. It's staining your floor. So they just end up throwing it away. Now, when that happens, then you're kind of fucked with an HD copy. But TerraVision's going in and getting the best possible source, and we're bringing that back. And that's not going to be every movie we're doing. That's just an example of something that we will be doing, because we have had multiple films scanned already. We have found negatives, we have found inner negatives. We have UHDs planned. So we will always present, and this is something for the audience and for yourself, because I get frustrated by this too, because I know that sometimes it's possible, is that whatever we have available to us to give the best presentation and it's warranted with the film, that's what we're going to do. So we have a movie that we should be announcing in April, that will be probably more than likely, as soon as we know the logistics, we'll have a UHD, and it's really never been on tape.
Oh,
So it's moving
that's
from
quite the lead.
a lost scenario to UHD, because we have the capabilities. So that's the extent that we're doing it. We're not going to be putting out a Blu-ray and then seeing how it does and putting out a UHD. We'll be putting out the best version of the film, but not version, best like quality, I guess, as you could say.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, if it's warranted. We do have some like newer films, like very contemporary things that are just now released. And sometimes it's hard to justify UHD right out of the gate. We're not talking about like, newer films that are in the theater or stuff. We're talking about like really small indies. And some of these are, sometimes they don't even master to 4K, which is crazy. Because we come in contact with that recently with a film that we have, again, another movie in April. And I was just for sure we could do UHD on it. And they were like, oh, no, we can't, because we master it to, and I was like, why would you do that in 2022? It was 2021, I think it was done. But still, it was just like, okay, well, then we can just do Blu-ray. But we're going to be very vocal about that. Certain things that are new, or we'll be pick and choose. But older stuff, if we have the capabilities, and and that's the other thing. It has to be real, because as sure as you have this show and you review home video, that a lot of 4K is fake sometimes, and not true 4K UHD. Well, We're not going to do that shit, because that costs money for us. Because even if you have not true 4K UHD and you fake it, or it's like an upres, it is fucking costly to put a 4K UHD title out. Like, it's almost 3 times the amount that it is for a Blu-ray. Well, we don't have. We want to use those funds to acquire more films. We don't want to do it as a market, because the thing is, just like DVD was, just like Blu-ray was, and now 4K, it's a marketing gimmick for a lot of things, and that's something that we will not be a part of. So it's not like every month there's going to be a UHD coming from television. That won't happen. But when the possibilities are there, yeah. And we just have to be vocal about a 4K scan doesn't equate to a UHD. That's not what that means. You can have something in a 4K scan and not have UHD capabilities. Because we scanned a print in 4K recently, because it was the movie was scanned before as a print. And a little bit, there's some compression issues and whatnot. And so we had the opportunity to scan in 2K, 4K. And I was like, do it in 4K. But that doesn't, you can't bring a print to UHD. I mean, you could, but it would be a lie, and then we would get bad reviews and be called liars or whatnot for the people that analyze these things. But I mean, like I said, we'll be vocal. We just recorded our first episode of our kind of TerraVision podcast, where we'll be covering the titles and explaining what we do and how we do it.
Yeah, I think the transparency part of that is key for this audience, like the collector market that really this caters to, because a lot of that is lost at the larger studio. Like you said, there's these upreses and marketing gimmicks, and it's like, is that really even worth buying on 4K? That's kind of the conversation a lot of people are having right now. There's some excellent restorations, like, don't get me wrong, but then there's some clunkers too, or some stuff that you're just like, is it worth $30 to go from this to this minimal, tiny little, difference that is sort of artificially created anyway with up resolution. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. Like, I think that transparency will be huge. The more you can talk about the process. And that's part of what I wanted to do here with this podcast too, is like open that up to people in this world, because I don't think anyone understands the amount of time and effort that go into all of this, whether it's a UHD or a Blu-ray or whatever you're putting out there. I mean, I have people who are like, "Hey, you have an audience. Like, why don't you go try to acquire films and put them out?" And I'm like, because it takes a shit ton of work and effort and time and money, and none of which I have right now. So like, it's a lot harder than what people think. And it's what you guys are doing is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, even if you take, cause we always get, not we always get, but I see comments online of like, why does a shot on video movie cost so much?
Yeah.
Because it's expensive. Like, just you're not really dealing with like there's not a huge jump between VHS and Blu-ray, or VHS and film. There is a gap, but it's not. We're not talking like $10,000. We're talking a few $1,000s if it's done right. Like I said, we with Copperhead acquiring it for the license. Shooting new extras, doing 3 tape transfers, getting it on Blu-ray, and then the headache that it was to get it right. I mean, we consider Copperhead cursed behind the scenes because we had so many issues with getting it out and getting everything correct. End of the line was the same thing, because we're also meticulous, right? We don't want to half-ass anything. We don't want to put something out, because there are some, not Blu-ray companies, but there's some DVD companies that just are like, oh, what format is it? Oh, an MP4? Sure, put it on a disc. That's not how things work. Things have to be specific for Blu-ray to be perfect. And you can spend a longer time on sometimes a shot on video. I mean, the amount of time and headaches that for horror workout that we're dealing with is insane, but we're doing it, and we'll continue to do it. So.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask Ryan, you brought up earlier, you have like the rights to you had the rights to like 40 different movies for VHS releases, right?
Right.
How does that work? Do you have to relicense things like that for DVD, Blu-ray? Like, is it a different licensing deal, or are those titles that you still have access to?
No, it's all very annoying. It's all very specific to the format. So I wish that they were transferable. No, and I mean, we haven't actually launched our sort of new VHS line yet, because if you go to the website, there's currently nothing for sale because it all sold out. But I mean, we're sitting on a lot of stuff right now, between VHS, LP, cassette, Blu-ray. I mean, I don't know. I would say like 150 plus releases that we're kind of hoarding. Not for any reason other than we're trying to do the best possible job with all of them. So,
Ryan miscalculated.
What's that?
So we have a lot more than that. It's scary, is what it is.
How many do we have?
We have close to 250 movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's that release schedule look like for you? Like, what is the time? Yeah. I mean, it must, right?
No, it's fine, because we're able to, some stuff we have to do contractually. We have to get it out at a certain time. But we also don't have a problem delaying something if we know we can, make it right. So, we had for our last announcement, we had Copperhead and End of the Line. And then our next, which we should be announcing probably in the next, I would say 2 weeks or less, our next 3 titles. And then we have 4 titles, trying to do 4 titles in the next month, and then 5 the next month, and then 6. So the standard will be 6 a month, starting hopefully in June if we're able to do it. which we're kind of on track. And then we've joked around, and this is actually a serious thing that we're trying to do, is we have 10 titles in October, just for the month of October, but it's all horror films. Just to do something fun and kind of special, and maybe have some extra goodies with it. But it's just trying to do things. I mean, there's are obviously some like package things, like some box sets and multi-film sets and stuff like that will be in there. But yeah, it's kind of crazy, but we're also not slowing down on acquiring things. So nothing has changed. And to be fair, like, we had the stuff that you're seeing right now, like Copperhead and the Line, Attack of the Killer Refrigerator, those types of things. Those were all done when we were doing like one a month when we were a partner label. And now those are coming out. So when we split and started doing our own thing, we really kicked it into high gear towards in kind of the beginning of April. I had a truckload of films that I have found the rights and material for through the years of doing this. That's the other thing, is I had a lot of content that I had in my back pocket that, I was having a tough time getting anybody at Vinegar Syndrome to sometimes pay attention to, because it was too obscure, too weird, or sometimes, shot on video, shot digitally, whatnot. I was still trying to get those out. And I also had even stuff from my Wild Eye days, like Attack of the Killer Refrigerator and Copperhead were two titles I was trying to get for what became Visual Vengeance. It was called, I think, Wild Eye, like SP or EP or something when I was doing that. But I was starting a shot on video line at Wild Eye. And that's where I acquired Slaughter Day, LA Age Jabber, and stuff like that. With Rob, things were a little bit different with some of these other films with, money wise or, contracts, whatnot. So I had probably maybe 40 or 50 of those titles that I was just kind of sitting on. And when Ryan and I talked about it of not having a brand, it's just, as soon as we start this, we signed them all. So, I mean, it's almost every day we were signing 1 to X amount of films, and we're still kind of doing that. We're in talks with multiple companies, package deals, individual movies, indies, from shot on video stuff to contemporary titles to working with other studios. Like it's like I said, it's all day, every day is just insane amount of emails and trying to, make deals, make sure that, people are happy. Cause we're also kind of like filmmaker first, I mean, it's not that we are filmmaker first, because we're dealing with a lot of filmmakers right out of the gate. And a lot of movies still today are dumped on media, with no extras, no nothing, shitty Amray cases,
I mean, if they even get that, and they're not just dumped on a streaming service somewhere to be lost,
Right. Well, that's something that I've been, very aware of over the past like 5 years, is there's a lot of newer films that don't see a physical media release. Yeah. So that's something that we're doing. We're going to these streaming companies, because shitty enough, a lot of these companies, when they acquire a film, they include home video rights in those contracts. So they have the streaming rights, which is what they put out, but they have no intention of ever putting out a Blu-ray, which is super fucking shitty. You should just keep it separate. But luckily, a lot of these companies are like, oh yeah, cool. We have no problem doing home video. That would be great. They want to, but it's expensive. And what do? They put out a small indie on Blu-ray and then sell it on their non-existent website that they have or store.
Right.
So it makes sense why they can't, but it also makes sense why they actually acquire it. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword and that sort of thing. Because there's a very divided audience with streaming in physical media, and there's a little bit of crossover. So we're trying to work with some of these companies, we'll promote the streaming service, you promote the physical media, vice versa. And we're obviously getting stuff for streaming too when we acquire things, because we have that in our back pocket because we have opportunities. Because there's many streaming services now that you can just go to and say, "Hey, here's 10 films. What do you want? Let's make a deal," and that helps out too. But yeah, there's a lot of films that we've acquired that are indies from like the early 2000s that are stuck on DVD or never had a physical media release that are coming out through television. End of the Line is a perfect example. I mean, that movie was released in 2007 on DVD, and it hasn't moved from a format since, other than I think a Blu-ray. Well, it's not a very good Blu-ray in Germany, but other than that, that's the jump that the movie made. And we have plenty, like I said, with plenty of other indies that are from the 2000s and things like that we're very, very happy to bring to home video. And there's a lot of foreign films that we have that got a physical release in their home country, but never over here. And we've acquired a few of those, and those are kind of the early 2000s. A lot of festival stuff, I will say that, because I've been going to festivals for a long time, and they're a blast. And then sometimes you'll never hear of these movies again on home video, and it's one of the most frustrating things. So I've been just going through my old catalogs of festival, and I was like, what happened to that movie? And then we're picking those up. So
yeah, I feel that for sure. I mean, I won't mention the title, but that's how the one that I mentioned to you, it was the same thing. I was like, I went to a festival, I saw this great movie 10 years ago, and I feel like nobody has ever seen it since.
I think that's
and they just disappear. Because I do I mean, I'm not crazy with festivals. I go to the one in Boston pretty much every year, independent film festival there. At the Great Somerville Theater, which is still independently owned and is like 100 years old, which is awesome. But I've seen so many movies there, and it's so wild how much people always think like, oh, lost movies. Yeah, they're 100 years old. Like, there are lost movies from the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Which
There's
is
some
wild.
movies that don't have a chance. Yeah, we recently acquired one of my favorite French movies. I saw at a festival years ago, and a DVD came out in France. And luckily it did have English subtitles, but that's it. It only came out in France. So when I talk about this movie, no one knows what the fuck I'm talking about, because it didn't even really play a lot at festivals. It played at a few. And that was one of my like big things that I was after. Because I always was like, man, if I have a video label, these are the movies that I'm going to have, because those are my babies. So it's a little bit more gratifying doing a TerraVision, because it's more personal, I think. But I did that with, obviously Vinegar Syndrome as well, and a couple titles for, Wild Eye during that time. So
fair to say you guys have quite the runway as a bit to keep releasing titles, which is always good, because I think that's I mean, I have that concern. I see a new label pop up, and I'm like, all right, here it comes. They'll have a string of 3 or 4 months, and they'll have 10, 12 titles, and then all of a sudden it'll be 6 months before you hear from them again, and then it'll be a year, and then they're gone, right? So that the fact that you've come into this with a really nice catalog is good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the thing, is that we want to keep that momentum.
Yeah.
Smart. And it's fun on our end. I know it's fun as a fan, because you can jump on my social media and you can see pictures of my, media room and all the shit that I have in there. I'm a physical media fan first and foremost. That's what got me into this business.
Yeah.
I was buying, my parents we bought the beta, we bought the CEDs, we bought laser discs, we bought, tapes. My mom bought the very first DVD player when it came out. It was $1,000. Spent like $50 on the fucking Crow on DVD when it came out. Like, that's what I did. And the same thing with Blu-ray. I remember I bought a PlayStation 3 or 2, 3, because it was $100 cheaper and it was $600. It was $100 cheaper for the Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
You get buying a PS. I didn't even fucking play. I never played one game on that goddamn thing. I bought it for a Blu-ray player, and I remember buying like T2 for like $30. But that's kind of my background. So I'm a hardcore fan of physical media and also of the movies. So it's really fun to do that. But I also like to the anticipation for announcements is something that's really cool. Like stuff that Vinegar Syndrome does and Arrow does. They have those monthly announcements. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes it's hard to keep up because then labels, they do good work, but Screen Factory is just so all over the place sometimes. It's like, oh, here's 5 titles, and then you won't hear anything for a bit. And then those 5 titles are great. It's stuff that we wanted. But at the same time, it's like it kind of gets lost in all these because there's so many boutique labels now.
Yeah. The consistency
consistency is important.
It's key because there are a lot of labels like even the Vestron video label that Lionsgate does, right? Which is a pretty cool label, but you'll get 2 and then you'll go 6 months before you hear anything. And it's like, do they still exist? Did it die off? Did they stop it? That monthly consistency will be huge for you guys.
Yeah. And that's, I appreciate you saying, because that's something that we're very concerned about, with our announcements and mm-hmm. things like that. So, we're trying to build those titles up and getting X amount, but we'll always at least have one for sure. But I think we'll pull it off, because the thing that is tough about doing what we're doing is that we're not at the mindset of like, let's take it easy. We're at the mindset of like, let's act like we've already existed for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because it's where we are. We've been doing this for a while. So, it's just learning some new things because we had big teams, or I had a big team back when I was doing home video and other companies. Now it's pretty much like myself, Ryan, Justin Beam's now part of our team at TerraVision, which we're super excited about.
He's great. He was on the podcast. He was very good.
And I saw Justin was on here. And then, of course, Ryan's wife, Chloe, she takes care of all like the shipping and packaging and all the cute little things that you get when you order a disc. Earl, Kess is doing our artwork, so he's part of our team. So, we don't have like everything's kind of funneling through myself and now Justin, because there's a lot to put together on the QC mm-hmm. side of making things, fuck up and have mistakes, it's going to happen. Like no matter how many eyes you put on things, you're still going to have mistakes. I've even seen mainstream companies put the wrong image on the back of a fucking Blu-ray from another movie before.
All the time.
So I don't think that will happen, but misspellings and stuff like that, that shit's going to happen. But the amount of work that goes into QCing stuff, we recently just did that with our subtitles, our captions for a movie, is that our QC report is like we missed a bunch of periods and commas and stuff. And we're like, oh, okay, we'll go back and change all that, and that's what we did. There's going to be things that fall out, but we have a small team doing all of this stuff, but between, like I said, getting the restorations done, getting the scanning done, it's a long fucking process, and things that I tease about online right now, those sometimes won't be out for another year or two, because that's how long it takes, from acquiring something. And again, it's a different story for every title. We could acquire something, today, and it's like, okay, well, we have the master. It looks good. We can do a few interviews, do a commentary, and we can flip it out in probably a couple months. That's, something that's very easy. But if it's something like, tape, and we have to find elements, it gets on this list of things to do. And it can be up to sometimes, 2 years. So it's crazy.
I do want to ask, and maybe you can both comment on this, having dealt with this in different spaces, but what are those What are those deals like? I don't know how much you can say, but like, is it usually like, hey, I want to release your movie. Okay, here's lump sum. Now I own the rights, and now we take the burden of, we need to put the money up front to manufacture this and release it, are they royalty deals, or like how does a lot of this stuff come together? Because I am super curious. Like, I don't know, could somebody like me go out and be like, well, here's $5,000, I'm going to buy the rights to your movie on Blu-ray, or is it much more involved than that for a lot of these contracts?
It again, different story for every movie. I mean, we have, and it also depends on the movie. And sometimes the person knows the film's success or popularity, which changes things. So again, it's a different story. I mean, we have deals from where we have, we have a set of lost films that are coming out from a filmmaker. It's four films. He made them when he was younger. All shot on video, no audience, no IMDb page for these movies, no nothing. You cannot find them streaming. The only reason why these movies exist is through tape trading. And we also have a guy that we acquired 3 films of his, that he lives in Ohio, and he just self-distributed. No IMDb page. You can type these movies on Google, they don't pop up. Nothing. Well, it's really hard to make money off of those things because we're practically doing a new movie. So some of those deals is just like, you let us have the rights, we'll put it out, we'll split the profits.
Got it.
Then other films, it's like, hey, we want to license this, and they're like, sure, $20,000, and it's like, okay, let's evaluate to see if that's a smart move for us. And, because the thing is like, you may acquire a movie for $5,000, but the amount of money that it costs to put that movie out correctly is 10 times more. I mean, to put out to put out a DVD is pretty cheap, but to put out a Blu-ray, from start to finish, I mean, you could be looking at like $20,000. Easy to put a disc out, and that's without any issues. And that's
just to get the first, and then does that include, you need to manufacture hundreds, thousands of these, or is that literally just to get to the finish line, and then
that's just
replication costs?
Obviously, but it's mostly getting to the end.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to cost more if you want more, but our slip covers are not cheap because they're great quality. So that adds up significantly. The Blu-rays obviously cost. I mean, there's so many other like little fees that people don't know about, like between your authoring fee and stuff like that, and you got to pay for QC. There's just so many different, like, the bill racks up. I mean, Ryan can tell you, he does all the payments. The bills just rack up, like every little thing. It's like, oh, we have to create captions. Okay, well, we got to do that. We have a problem with the audio. Like End of the Line, we did a 5.1 mix on the film because we had the opportunity to. That fucking costs money. So every little thing that you change, every little thing that you improve, it tacks on a fee. And it may be $100, it may be $1,000. Like, oh, it's just $1,000. But once you look at the end of the day, it's like, shit, from start to finish, from acquiring, we spent $30,000-$40,000 on getting this movie out. Is it going to fucking sell? I don't know. So it's, and that's the thing. There's always a big gamble. And sometimes with filmmakers, you can explain to them, like, this is a fucking gamble. No one knows your movie. Like, it's disappeared. Like, we can't give you $20,000. We can give you this and maybe like a 50-50, like after. So, but there's no standard deal. Yeah. That's, I guess, the long story to this is that there's no standard deal. You have to evaluate the movies. Sometimes when you deal with big companies, they just have a flat rate and you can't get around that. And that's incredibly expensive. So again, every story from attaining rights to manufacturing, getting out, it's a case by case basis. But if you do everything, in my eyes, what I say correct, when you don't skip by on anything, because it's easy to, it really is. And some things will go unnoticed. Some things, you'll have people will be like, oh, well, that sucks. I don't want somebody to buy one of our titles and say, well, why didn't you do that? Well, I want to have an answer why we didn't do it. I just don't want it to be like, well, we didn't feel like it. It cost too much. I mean, we all have to do things within reason too. We just can't blow a bunch of money on an unknown lost movie. But like I said, we want to be clear and transparent on what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it. And hopefully our audience and future audience will appreciate what we're doing and the time that we spend on a shitty shot on video movie that we love. But that's not all we're doing, obviously. Like I said, we have things that are shot digitally, things that are shot on film. We have everything coming out with TerraVision.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you guys have. It sounds like you've got it. It sounds like you've got it figured out. I know it's a lot more. It's a lot more work than.
You don't have it figured out. We're still learning. But it's always. You're always learning.
You've got a path though, which I think is really good. You've got a vision here. I could see this. You've got a terror vision. It's going to do really well, I think, and I'm excited because a lot of these movies, I like weird stuff too. So when you're telling me if it's too weird and obscure for Vinegar Syndrome, like count me in. Like that's usually my limit of weird and obscure. So like let's go beyond that. I would love to check some of these out when you guys start pumping them out. I got to grab the last couple. But yeah, keep me posted on the announcements, and hopefully it all works out. But this is like nobody's ever given this level of transparency on like what it actually costs and licensing and all that stuff. So this is super helpful for me to understand.
Costs way too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan yells at me most of the time, but very Mr. Greyface yells at me with love. But yeah, no, it's one of those things where I don't recommend people to getting into this because like it's just because here's the thing is that no matter what it costs, every film, there's no way to predict how a film will do.
Yeah.
Sometimes your most weirdest title will take off and you have no idea why.
Yeah.
And then you might have a fucking banger that you think where everybody talks about and has a cult following and then it doesn't move. I've seen it a million times. I did it for many years. It's unpredictable. I mean, certain things, that's like, okay, that's going to do well, but sometimes you'd be surprised how hard it is to move even like 3,000 units on something, but we're also the other thing on that, which we, would like to talk about is that we try to make our releases very affordable for any consumer because it's very like, again, it's touch and go with pricing on movies. I buy Blu-rays all the time. We're going from like $20 to like $75 sometimes. It's insane.
Oh yeah.
And we're trying our best. Right now, everything that we have on our website is $24.99. And we're going to really try to keep it at that price point unless, it's a bigger box set, of course, where there's, more films. Obviously UHD will cost a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have our club. So if you sign up for our club at this moment in time, you pay $225. And for domestic, that's shipping included. So you're getting each title for $22.50 right to your door, which I consider incredibly cheap, in the grand scheme of what everything costs. And that is not skipping out on the art, the box, the slip covers, the packaging. Everything's 100% just like your other favorite companies.
Right.
We're not going cheap with that, but times are tough for everybody. We're probably possibly going to go in a recession, more than likely at some point. And we want media and movies to be a thing that people can buy and watch and enjoy while things are sometimes miserable outside. you
Mhm.
know and we want you to know that you can come to us and we have a decent price on our titles. Now you may get something super fucking weird and you don't like. Incredibly possible, and probably will happen. But obviously you could just resell it on eBay. But there's we want to have like I said, a video store, a community that you could come to, and you have a wide array and of things. And yeah, we just want you to enjoy what we're doing, and we want people to see it, because sometimes these movies cost so much. You have to wait and save up. You have to
Yeah.
wait for a sale. We want our stuff to always look like it's on sale. It is. It's $24.99. That's fucking super cheap considering of how much work and time goes into things.
Absolutely.
I know it's easy to miss and be like, movie sucks. Fuck you. It's like, okay, but we spent almost a year on getting that out to you. I understand you don't like the movie. That's cool. But, the packaging was nice. It has 13 hours
Absolutely.
of extra features on it. I mean, we like, that's not a joke. Copperhead has over 13 hours of extras on that disc.
Well, and people just need to keep in perspective. Like, it's kind of crazy, but like, movies are one of the few things that have actually gotten cheaper over time in total. Like, I have laser discs that are still sealed that I've collected that have, $60 price tags on them. It's like, can you imagine paying $60 for Jurassic Park on Laserdisc? Like, now you can get it for $5. Like, it's one of the few things in this world that has actually been able to become a little more affordable, which is why I love it and I collect. But
yeah, I mean, I remember, when I was working at a video store, if someone lost the tape, it's like, well, you got to buy it now. Oh, what's it cost? $99.
yeah, insane.
Because that's what tapes were costing at that time, And you sometimes, even though you had this VHS revolution, in the 80s and 90s with video stores, the reason why those people were making a lot of money is because those tapes cost between $60 and $100 a piece. Even well up into like the early 2000s. Late 90s. I remember my mom purchasing tapes for me. Like, I remember buying Mortal Kombat for $39.95 tape. So that's why I have no problem spending sometimes $50 on a fucking UHD, because I did a lot of stupid buys when I was younger, and asked my mom to buy me stuff because I wanted to watch the movie at any time, and that's still cool. But yeah, people don't realize how, you're right. And it is kind of fascinating how things have gotten cheaper with movies, but they're still expensive because there's just so much going on. Because we want to buy everything, right? You want to support all these companies. You want to buy from Screen Factory, Vinegar Syndrome, Synapse, all this stuff. And before you know it, it's like, even the partner label stuff with VS is like, oh, there's 10 great, cool things that I could watch, but that's going to cost me, fucking $400. Like, it all adds up. It all adds up. And yeah, we if you buy any of our titles, we're internally grateful. Even if you don't like it, we're still happy. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about why you didn't like Copperhead.
Well, I think you guys are on the right track. I'll say that for sure. So, before I let you go, let's where can we plug this? Where can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch? Maybe both personally, you can plug your own stuff here, but also obviously TerrorVision or Graveface, or where can people find you guys?
Mr. Graveface?
I don't exist anywhere, but the company exists at terror-vision.com. Brad actually exists as a human being on Twitter.
Yeah, well, I mean, TerrorVision has an active Facebook page, which you can find. I'm at Brad F. Henderson on Twitter, which I talk a lot about our company and what we're doing, and I tease quite a bit on there. I'm on certain Discord channels with, because I like to engage with fans because I think that's a lot of fun. And then we have a Blu-ray forum dedicated to TerraVision that I, am part of. So I'm on there, kind of talking about the same thing. So I'm out there, and it's, promotion and engagement, because I like to know what people like. I still find it like, even if you hate something that we put out, I would still like to know, and still, I mean, a civil conversation about it. But I do like to engage. And I do
Good
like
luck on Twitter and the forums with the civil conversations.
Well, I also have a very low tolerance policy. So if you are fucking nasty or you treat people nasty, we'll ban you from the fucking store. Like,
I hear you.
we're not going to have any toxic bullshit in our groups.
Good.
But anyways, yeah, it's we like good, clean fun. The movies can be dirty as fuck, and nasty and offensive, but we're not going to do that to people and fans, or let fans do that to you too. So
absolutely. All right, so terrorvision.com. I'll link all this stuff. I'll link Twitter and Facebook and all that. It'll be linked if you're watching video, it'll be in the video description, audio and the audio description, everywhere you can find it, so people can go check it out. But yeah, definitely stay updated with these guys, because they're onto something here. He said 250 movies, so now I've got expectations.
This post, it might be 300. We don't fucking know.
So I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. I think you're going to have plenty of people who are interested as well. There's a big interest in this space, and like you said, that whole idea of bringing the home video, the video store, like that experience back to life is, I think that's the nostalgia you can really tap into and capture people's interest. So
yeah, I think most people that buy stuff. Yeah, I think most people that buy stuff were at a video store at one point. You walk in and you have so many choices, and that's what we want. Like, we're not going to have just shot on video movies. We're not going to have just horror films. It's,
I like it.
We want, like, I guess the goal is anybody that purchases physical media, even in the smallest capacity, in 2 years at least have one TerraVision title.
Right. They can find something that fits their interest.
Something in their collection. So
cool.
Any last words, Mr. Greyface?
Thanks for the talk, my friends.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Thank you guys for coming on, and I'm really excited to see where this goes, and hopefully this helps get the word out. This will be everywhere, and but it's been a really interesting conversation. Again, every time I do one of these, I learn a lot. But the transparency you guys have, and I've seen it on your Twitter account, Brad, too. Like, it's important. It'll keep people engaged. That kind of transparency is something you don't get these days in this world. So I'd say keep that up and keep building the community, and you're onto something special here. Yeah, no, we appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so that was our interview with Brad and Ryan from TerrorVision. As they mentioned, check out terrorvision.com. It's terror-vision.com, where you can find all of their latest releases. Right now, it's just a handful of stuff, and things like, Attack of the Killer Refrigerator, just kind of really wild, wacky, obscure stuff. So if you're like me and you're into that world, you're going to really like what they have to offer. Great slipcovers, great packaging. Like Brad mentioned, 13 hours of special features on Copperhead. Like, who's doing that right now? They're working with some great artists. They're working with Justin Beam, who we had on the podcast, for special features now. I mean, they are a label to watch for sure. They're going to make some noise in this space. And yes, it's going to be a little niche within a niche, and it's going to be sort of more obscure. But I also think that they're going to have some mainstream or bigger name titles come out with their success, and 250 movies in their bag. I can only imagine what might be on its way. So I think they're definitely one to pay attention to. So go check out terrorvision.com. I'll link them in the descriptions of the audio and video episodes. And also you can find Brad on Twitter. And like he said, in a couple Discord communities and forums, but Twitter, he's been very active there. And that's how I got in touch with him and started following what was happening at TerrorVision. So that's probably the best way to do it. But Appreciate you guys all coming out for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I don't know who's going to be a guest next week. I'm still working on that, but hey, we'll figure it out. I do this thing this is sort of off the cuff. I do it when I can, and I just find people that make sense, and hopefully it works out. So, we definitely have some good guests coming up. I'm not sure which episode will drop next week, but as always, stay tuned for the weekly episodes on Friday, and I'll be trying to do more of those coming soon episodes each week, so you know what's coming to 4K and Blu-ray and all the latest news and physical media and home entertainment as a sort of small bonus episode. So pay attention to those as well. I just dropped the first one last week, but check that out, support it. And as always, please, if you enjoy the content, 5 stars on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen is super helpful to help us rank up and get more listeners. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy out there, and I'll talk to you soon.
Coming soon. Be sure to subscribe to the Films at Home podcast using your favorite app so you don't miss another episode. And while you're there, don't forget to rate and review this podcast, which helps us out tremendously. You can also help support us by watching our short-form content over on YouTube and TikTok by searching Films at Home. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at films_at_home. The intro and outro were created by Elin Osborne. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.